that we share with the Enville Parish and a resolution for possible action. Mr. Norwood, I believe you were one to brief us on this matter.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bullard. I have a map here that was sent to us by the state. There are two items included in this resolution. The first one is for a mineral lease. Typically, it's going to be gas in that zone, and the state bids the lease for us. They attempted this last year and they had no bidders, so this is going to be a rebid of the same lease. But this second piece here is for an underground storage area that's about 2,000 acres. Being as this is partially in Bossier Parish, we have an interest in that as well in the section 16, which is the volatile red area. This is one square here, and this blue is the Bossier portion. But our share of the entire area is based on the Bossier Parish portion here and here, which is about 35% of the total interest between the Enville and Bossier. And so the resolution is to clarify that interest, which is an increase from the originally estimated 12%, and for the state to move forward with both of these leases.
Members of the committee, you've heard Mr. Norwood's explanation of this agenda item. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Motion by Mr. Wiggins, second by Mr. Dean. All in favor, please show. All opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to our second item on the agenda, Technology Department E-rate update, provided by Mr. Stuart Thompson, Supervisor of Technology.
Thank you, Chairman Bullard and committee. So thank you for a few minutes here to address the Building Grounds Committee. We do have several large-scale projects in terms of E-rate specific projects that are ongoing right now. We have several that are coming up next year, so we want to take a few minutes to update you on really two things: what we're currently in the process of doing, and then what our plans are for the upcoming year. So thank you for your attention for a few minutes here. So just a reminder, I always like to remind folks what E-rate specifically, the education rate is a federal program that provides assistance to schools, libraries, and other organizations for two categories. Category one, which is internet access, which provides internet access to the district, and our wide area network, which is our fiber connection back to the BIG. So that's sort of year to year. There's nothing really new to report in that respect. Category two is the big one, of course, that you provided some dedicated funding to address some major issues that the district has, and that is what's called internal connections. That represents wiring within schools. It represents wireless access points, which we'll address here momentarily. So the district's currently at 80% discount rate, which means that the federal part of that is 80%. The local board's responsibility is 20%. So I'm going to talk about, really, like I said, two things. Number one, what we're currently working on, what our goals are, what we've accomplished so far, and how that looks for our future. So I presented these major issues to the board previously, so I'm happy to report that we've made major progress. In a lot of these places, we've got a little bit of space to go, but we made major progress in the last year and a half. So there are two major things that we're working on right now. That is upgrading in category two, internal cabling, and 28 of our schools, which were done in the mid-90s. And it doesn't take a genius to know that cabling done in the mid-90s is not sufficient for 2021. So we are addressing things that haven't been addressed since 95. So we finished Code, Legacy, Russian, Elm Grove Middle, Airline, and Green Acres. We're currently, this week, moving to Halton High School, Bossier L, Bel Air, Sun City, Suffolk Place. You ask why we're going in that order. We're really going from from really the worst conditions to the best conditions down the line. It's a multi-year project. I think it'll take probably about 3 years to get to all 28 schools. So that work is being done after hours from 4 to 2 in the morning. So it's not disrupting the educational day. So a couple of goals of this project, we're trying to fully address wireless access. Of course, there was no wireless devices in '95, and we have about 40,000 on our network today. So we're trying to address additional drops to address IP phones, which I'll talk about here momentarily. Clean up. So this is a picture of Coke Middle, which I think was the very first school to be wired, and it was just a mess, right? So things have been added over time, and we're able to on the right you can see what it should look like, which is what we're approaching. So another goal was to run fiber at all IDFs, and I'll explain what that means in just a moment, what the advantage of it is. VLANs, without going too much into it, is a really important step we're trying to take to secure a network, and then obviously plan for future growth, which has really not been done in 20 years. So these are some pictures of some work that was done at Legacy, which said we just built Legacy, but things have already changed since then, and there wasn't really much in terms of the cabling when Legacy was built, much foresight to hopefully anticipate what was down the line, so we're trying to do that. So we have a lot of these switches that are in classrooms, which is quite frankly just not good. So we're also removing those from classrooms and public areas and getting them behind for lock and key. That's what you see there. So and then the final goal there was to mount these access points. So access points, when they're sitting behind a desk, are completely unusable, which is where they are in about half of our classrooms. So we're getting those in the right place across the district. So one last goal is to run fiber directly from the main distribution in the school. This is a map of airline, which is probably the worst. We just addressed airline. So this is an example of bad design, which sort of all these things were sort of put together over time, and really sort of no master plan about network design, which we try to go back and correct. So I see two pictures here, what's called a tree and a star. So a tree is just what it is. So I give the example. This actually is not theoretical. This happens about once a month. Well, it doesn't anymore because we fixed it. So for example, if something happens on F-Wing 401 airline, that actually it completely takes down all of F-Wing, K-Wing, J-Wing, boys gym, girls gym in the modular building, because they are in a tree and not in a star. So this, we don't have to look too much in detail, but you see all these things connected, and that's just bad. That's bad design for a technology network. So we've addressed that by running everything back to a single point. So this is one major goal of trying to look at a network, look at a technology network, and try to design it for current standards and future standards. So this is something that we're addressing at all of our schools as well. Airline, of course, was the biggest project, and we just finished that one. So last piece of what we're currently doing, and I'll move to what our plans are for this year, and actually what we've already started. We made sort of three major advancements. One in our content filter and our firewall, which was 8 years old, and typically those should be switched out every 5 to 6 years. So we're a couple of years behind, but we think we're on a good schedule to be fully protecting and filtering our internet access. So we're installing UPSs, which are uninterrupted power supplies, which we know if we have sort of a power blip at one of our schools, it doesn't take the whole school down. So this provides that power whenever we have those issues or small power outages. And then trying to address, as I mentioned before, there wasn't a whole lot of foresight about growth of the network, which we're trying to address at this point. So we're adding switches, which are sort of the backbone of the network at all of our locations across the district. So these are things that E-Rate Category 2 addresses that we haven't been able to address, but thanks to the board's priority in funding these and committing this funding from year to year, we're able to get to a point where we're almost at, which is, I would say, caught up to where we need to be and then I can start looking to the future and planning for growth. So last part of this is about a $500,000 project for the board, but it's really a $2.3 million project with that 80%. The cabling, firewall switches, and UPSs. So that is 2020-21. So this is what we were able to do with that $500,000 that the board dedicated to these particular projects. So moving to the second part, what we're currently working on now is actually 3 major projects. I mentioned wireless. We went from 7 years ago, and again, wireless like firewall should be readdressed every 5 to 6 years. We're already about 2 years behind that. We also installed this solution with 0 Chromebooks 7 years ago, and we're now over 30,000 Chromebooks. So we're on a wireless network in which was, for all practical purposes, designed to support a few devices and not 30,000. So we're excited to finally address that, and then also be able to plan in the future and address this every 5 to 6 years. So second thing we're addressing is running fiber to all of our competition athletic facilities and all of our high schools. And of course, Benton Middle, the football field at Benton Middle. So this will accommodate a couple of major needs. Number one, IP cameras to get full coverage of those facilities, and then also provide outdoor wireless access to both our coaches and our public. So we're excited about that as sort of the second phase of that. We'll get started on that project in the next 2 months or so. And then finally, the last project we're working on this year is fiber to Plainfield High School. And I know that they're actually the only school or facility in the district that is not connected back to the main data center via fiber connection. It's a wireless connection, which is just not acceptable in 2021. So you can imagine, what the challenges are to get fiber from this point to Plain Dealing, which we've struggled with for many years. But we're excited to finally get that project underway in the next 2 to 3 months. So very excited about that project, which we've been working on now for about 3 years. So,
Stuart,
yes, sir.
question. When you say wireless to Plain Dealing, is that a dedicated public affairs school system line?
Yes.
Or are you working with other parties?
Yes, so it's part of our wide area network, which is a fiber connection from us at the BIG to every school. Plain Dealing has a fiber connection all the way up to, Central Office has a fiber connection, Benton Elementary has a fiber connection, then we have a fiber connection to the water tower in Benton, which is then wirelessly hopped to a water tower in Rocky Mount, which is then wirelessly hopped to Cary Martin, which is then fiber from Cary Martin to Plain Dealing. All right, so all that to say, there's so many points of failure, and that failure happens every month, basically, right? So a power outage in Benton takes down Plain Dealing.
So realistically, you just need to add fiber from Benton to
That's correct.
Plain Dealing.
Yes.
And
Well,
will be responsible for digging the hole and putting the fiber in it?
no, so it's all contracted out, and I'll explain how that happened here in a minute. But yeah, so this was part of our Cat 2 RFP now about 2 months ago. So the responses for the fiber to Plain Dealing were moving away really, so the cost. So and I'll explain that here in a minute. So. All right, so just briefly describe those 3 projects. This is an example of what it means to run fiber, and this is airlines. So we're running from the main distribution frame back to the home side football field, and then softball and baseball. So this will provide what we could not provide at this point, which is full coverage for IP cameras and then full outdoor access wirelessly to our teams. So we'll be doing this at all of our high schools. So Airline, Benton High baseball, softball, Lozier High football, Halton High football, baseball, and softball. Parkway the same. Plain Dealing, and I do have Elm Grove Middle, of course, football stadium, Benton Middle football stadium, Russian baseball and softball. And then Johnny Gray Jones, which we're also responsible for, also is on a wireless connection. We run fiber under Swan Lake to get them on a fiber connection. Talked about wireless access again 7 years ago, 0 Chromebooks, now 30,000 plus. Again, doesn't take much to understand that's not an acceptable solution in 2021. So, talked about the fiber. This is not the exact path, but this was a proposed path by the vendor. So this is obviously a dedicated fiber line coming from the BIC to Plainview High School. So the wireless project's about $1 million project, and at 20%, under $200,000 for the board. Fiber to athletic facilities is going to end up being about a $160,000 project. Again, we're using E-rate Category 2 funds, less than, well, right at $32,000 to the board. And then the fiber to Plain Dealing, which I'd estimate it to be over $1 million of response in and the RFP was pretty outstanding. Essentially, no build-out cost to the board and a slight increase in the monthly cost to the board. So that is a $52,000 3-year commitment, but only about $10,000 to the board. So you're getting fiber to the Plain Dealing for $10,000 for the next 3 years. So we're very, very happy with that response and happy that Plain Dealing will be on the same connectivity level as every other school in our district. And finally, just some other non-E-rate that I just point out to take the opportunity to talk about the phone system, which is not E-rateable, but it is a project we're working on, hope to roll out this summer. Continuing a Chromebook rollout with some federal funds that we've received. Continuing implementation of our new SIS. If you've not seen, we've added online registration for kindergartners this week, which has been really, really successful. We have some significant changes to our state reporting model, which is going to go from a snapshot reporting October 1 and February 1 to a daily reporting to LDOE, which has been something our department's been working on for over 2 years. And then looking down the line, one of the next things that I'll start addressing is an intercom infrastructure, which is even older than the 90s. So, and that is somewhat E-rate eligible. So we'll be working on that as the next project. So, all right, that concludes my part. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment. Mr. Thompson, I appreciate all the work, and especially getting Plain Dealing on the line with our other schools. I know that's been a major undertaking.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. So you might imagine that not a lot of ISPs want to run fiber to Plain Dealing, but we're happy with the response and happy we'll get there.
Thanks, sir.
So if I understand what you said, we won't own that fiber service. We're going to just pay a monthly.
No, we don't.
Fee.
We don't own any of the fiber back to. We'll own the fiber on our campuses that we're going to run. We own that and we light it. So all the other fiber, the wide area network right now is Sunlink owned. So we're pay a monthly fee to Sunlink to light the fiber. Essentially, allow us that path from big to each one of our schools. So part of the E-rate program is you can't own it. Which is what a lot of districts are doing. We haven't crossed that bridge yet, because obviously if you own it, you maintain it, right? So there's some advantages of doing that, but we're not quite to that discussion point. So, yes, ma'am.
Brother.
I don't know if I heard you say this or not, but you said you start the Plain Dealing project in about 3 months. Is that what you said?
It could potentially, depending upon when we're funded. We haven't received Category 2 funding for next year, so potentially could start whenever that's received, which could be a month or in 3 months. So
How long does it take to get?
we don't have. We've done site visits at Plain Dealing, and we're waiting to hear back from Sunlink actually will not be this contractor. Sunlink is the one that said it would be about $1 million. And they didn't do that bid, right? So it could potentially be dependent upon what they already have built out. So they're not going to have to build fiber from big to plain buildings. Some of that already exists, so they're going to tie into it and then tie into our campus. So that's likely a 2 to 3 month project based on what I know about it.
So you're saying that kind of building by next year?
It could happen by July 1st, which certainly would be great. My goal would be certainly by the start of school.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you.
I just want to say to Thompson, thank you to the board for us having the foresight to see what we did last year or 2 years, I guess it was 2 years ago that we made that commitment for that. But to do that at 20%, and especially with the virtual learning and what we've had to do with the time the school shut down, to be able to do that, which we wouldn't have been able to do at all with the number of devices. So I thank you.
Just wanted to kind of echo some of those thoughts. I appreciate all your hard work. If you would please just tell your team as well that we appreciate all their hard work and what they've done. I did have one question. The computers that GDIC wanted to offer, were we able to use any of those?
We'll get them next week. Got a message from today. They're completely white, and we're preparing to pick them up next week. So right now it's like about 100, but I think we've got a good pipeline to be able to utilize some of their devices going forward. So absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Deming? I just want to thank Mr. Thompson and his department for being so aggressive and creative with addressing some of these things that were left dormant for a couple decades, and what they've been able to accomplish in the last 2 or 3 years is pretty impressive as far as getting us up to speed and addressing all of the issues and challenges that we've had. That doesn't happen without somebody like Mr. Thompson and the department he has, and so we're very fortunate to have him and his team working for Bossier Parish Schools. Amen.
That's why you are the spirit of excellence award winner, Mr. Thompson. Congratulations on your award, and this is an example of why you received it, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There be no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input. Next up is Mr. Clarence Babineau, and he's going to bring us up to date on our 2012 bond construction project, and then we'll follow up with the second report. So it is your floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mr. Norwood. This is a quick update. First slide, please. All right. Our bond program balances, those numbers are holding pretty steady from month to month. Right now, the current surplus lies in $265, $394, almost $395 for the debt intermediate, and right at $15,000 for the code middle. Parkway, there's been no change there. It's just the unspent funds of the patrimony. Benton High, the surplus went up slightly from the last time we reported. It's now saying $1,071,000. At Bossier High, it's went down a few $1,000s to $159. It was a purchase for some additional chairs recently. Houghton Middle steady at $28,000. Houghton Elementary $29,400. That has not changed. An unspent balance of $4,500 on the Houghton High roof repairs. Princeton Elementary, it's still at $17,000, $10,000 at Plain Dealing, $10,000 at Sun City, and $136,000 on the Parkway concessions, restrooms, high cruise, and parking. All told, $8.5 million. Any questions? All right, next slide, please. At the intermediate, we worked on the overall, about halfway through. Concrete block walls are 90%. Primarily what remains are some of the concrete block walls in the bathrooms. The interior metal stud walls are about halfway done. The roof trusses are 100% done. Roof decking is at 90%. What that's going to allow is the contractor now by the week to be in the dry. We'll get the rest of the roof decking up. We'll get the roof under regular metal. We'll then finish with the exterior sheathing, which helps keep the building more or less waterproof, not finished, but more or less waterproof, so you can start the interior work. His contract runs through September 18th. He has been slowed a bit by rain. He does expect right now that with the rain he's had, he's going to be finishing in late August sometime. We are discussing with him. We've asked the question several times. We've asked again yesterday. We had a progress meeting with him. Once he gets fully in the dry, he's been asked to find out what it would take to try to get completed by August 1st, so that Mr. Thompson and his group can come in and put in the technology, and then that furniture can get moved in, so that the room probably will be fully operational by the time students and teachers arrive. So that's a question that's on the table, and we'll be getting an answer in the near future. Any questions? All right, next question. All right, overall, that budget, $3.5 million, and there's no change there. The total cost today is $2,105,000, projected surplus $394,000. This is the schedule, right here, this bar chart. This is where the contractor's contract takes him. The green bar is where he currently stands right on now. So it's just a graphic of what I just mentioned to you. All right, next slide. A couple of quick photos. This is from yesterday. This is the interior on the north side, looking down. All these spaces, this is actually 5 classrooms you're looking at. They'll all be subdivided into with the walls shortly. These are all the trusses above that are done, and you can see the roof decking above that. Lower photograph from the outside, the sheathing and the underlayment is fully on the north side. There's only a small section on the south side where it's not in yet. You can see he's got his exterior sheathing and then his building wrap is going up. Again, about a week from now, that should all be white, if you will, all around the building. We're going to put some plastic over the window openings. It'll be another month before the windows get there, but once he puts plastic over those openings, we'll be ready to start doing sheet rock. Any questions on that? I'm sorry, that minute. Next slide, please. Coat-built, the exterior is largely completed. The interior completed items include the ceiling of the varnish block, the lighting, the air conditioning, the marking boards, cabinets, and doors. They're now working on painting, ceilings, flooring, and door hardware. Completion is scheduled for mid-June, but actually the contract's on track for an early finish, perhaps toward the end of May. We'll know more next month, give you a more firm date at that point, but he's going on pretty well right now. Any questions? Next slide. Budget $2.2 million, total project cost today $2,184,000. This leaves a surplus of $15,000. This is the bar chart of the schedule. This is right on target for mid-June. That bar may move over a week or two by next month. So I'll let you know that as well. Next slide. A couple of photographs. This is the exterior. The brick has already been cleaned. You can see these are the extra light fixtures have been installed. There's still a bit of dirt ready to be done. They've got some hay right now, but they've got to clean the side up from all the construction traffic. That'll probably be one of the last things that happens, and they'll take care of some grass seeding. This is an interior view of the band room. The ceiling's been painted, the lights are installed. Really, they're just using this to store some of their materials. The finished floor has to go in, and then a lot of cabinets. There are quite a few cabinets, both some existing and some new, that'll go in to store all the band equipment. Part of that to go in. This is a typical classroom. This is the teaching wall here. There's the cabinets. You can see the lights installed. There are strips of the ceiling tiles in place. It's about halfway finished. And then the flooring and then the base, and that room is just about finished. Any questions on curtain? Yes, sir.
You said something about grass seeding. I know due to access to that property during the construction, are we going to have additional grading and cleaning quite a bit of that up before we
contract has to clean up everything they disturbed.
Okay.
You put in temporary roads, there's trucks going, you have to clean all that old asphalt out, fix any fences that may have gotten cattywampus, any ruts you've got to completely fill out, front and back, and then take care of that. Usually hydro seeding, go involved sometimes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that is in the contract.
That's a standard, that's SOP.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, any other questions? Okay, next slide please. All right, up high, the structural steel is pretty much done. There's a little bit left, but it's probably about 90-95%. The contractor gave us a new schedule a couple weeks ago. It shows that he's slightly ahead of schedule, but there are some tasks in there that are actually behind. Mostly metal studs and concrete block. We got a notice a couple of days ago that there was a difficulty with getting the specified studs. They asked for a different manufacturer. That's been approved. There's also an issue with some of the concrete block we hear. I made some phone calls to get some more background. The block is being made locally. It has to be certified because some has a special firing as is required, and they're apparently waiting on one of the few special inspectors who can certify concrete blocks coming in from out of state. So I'm trying to get a little bit more information on that. That's the status right now. And that's just a summary of what I just mentioned right here in the sentence. Of course, we do continue to monitor progress. We report to you. We are there every day. We constantly make recommendations on how to improve their efficiency. Sometimes they take the suggestions, sometimes they don't, but that's up to the contractor. It's really on his back contractor to do that. One thing I will be doing is because he's technically behind schedule on some of the tasks, not overall, but on some tasks, we want to hold his feet to the fire, so I'll be sending out a letter to him, just to make sure we have a document where there's a little hiccup like that. He may have some good reasons for it. We're hearing things from different sectors of construction that there are some delays in some factories, some prices, some materials are going up, and fire with that yourself in your daily lives. But that's just the vagaries of construction. But we have to hold the seats on fire to finish with. All right, any questions on that slide? All right, next slide, please. Okay. Total project budget for all the work at Houghton High School is still at $16,784,000. The budget for the wing was $14,032,000. Total cost to date with actual expenditures and projected expenses $12,767,000. Projected surplus of $1,665,000. The budget on the painting that was approved still stands at $951,000. The budget on the LED field lighting is still $1,100,000. The budget for the ball field nets at $12,607. Graphically, the green bar is where the contractor's schedule shows him. He contractually has a few more weeks beyond that. That's still May and April. So if things do slide, there's still a little bit of fat, if you will, before school starts for the 2022 school. Yes, sir.
I just want to take this slide to congratulate Dak Prescott on his new contract with the Cowboys and his super performance on Houghton High School's field and some of these surrounding improvements. So very proud of Dak, very proud of him playing on that field. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to congratulate him.
Next slide, please. A couple of recent photos on the top. Steel construction, the low section is the admin wing. This is actually standing on McKinley looking back toward the southeast. This is a two-story classroom wing. In the other direction, right from this corner is the existing admin building. And this is the connections, the classroom wing, and then ways that any questions? That's the last slide on the bond program. If you want to go back and go to groups. Okay. I just have one quick slide for you, a quick update. The 9 schools that we talked about to be inspected were inspected last week on 2 days. We had 2 teams. So they were inspected April 7th and 8th. Of the 9 schools, we've identified 6 that we'd like to do some core testing. It's actually taking a roofing sample about 12-inch square and then send it to a lab for some analysis. The schools we've identified are Benton Middle, Apollo Middleview, Airline, Vic, and then T-L Roads. And really the idea is really just to verify the full extent of hill damage so that the school board recoups its actual losses. The adjuster is coming. We've been trying to get him for a little while. They've agreed to come and bring their team, so they're going to be walking the risk with us as we take the core test. It'll take several weeks to get the results, probably 4 or 5 weeks after that. So probably sometime in late May we should have some results on that and we'll report to you the results of those. Something else that's going on concurrent with all this is thermal imaging that's being done by a local company. Thermal imaging shows hot spots through a wall or a surface. And in the case of a roof, if the picture comes up red, we know there's heat leakage to the roof, which means the insulation is wet. And so when the insulation is wet, insulation is not formed like it's supposed to. And it shows you where there might be some hidden moisture under the roof. So that will help identify some of the spots you want to take some of those core samples to, better understand where the problems are on the roof. So that all takes place starting next week. Just so you know, the 3 projects have already gone to bid, and the 4th is next week. Bids so far have come in pretty good shape. I think you've already approved 2 of them. The 3rd one, I think is coming to your board meeting, the next board meeting, May 6th. So that's where we are with roof projects today. That's all we have right now. Any other questions?
At bid, do you know what the extent of the roof damage is? I mean, is it looking like it's going to be a total roof replacement or not?
Right now, they've only noted some repairs to the roof, and that's one reason we want to test it. The type of testing we've got in mind is called cryogenic freezing. So you take up the roofing and you freeze it to sub-zero temperature, and you can peel the layers back. And the idea is, from standing on the roof, you can just see what's on the surface. And the idea of the cryogenic testing is, if there's an impact from hail, it may show up in a sub-layer as some fractures. And if you just repair it, that could work for a few years, but you may start having leaks sooner than later. And if you're going to try to identify it and then get the adjuster to agree, if they agree that those are hail damaged fractures, then the goal is if they agree, then you can get a new roof. That's how we're trying to proceed. So he's trying to really do enough testing to really fully identify the extent of the damage. But right now, what they're telling us is a fluid repair. Okay, so we'll see if that is the case once we get the test back from the project freezing. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Babineau. I believe that completes all issues and matters to come before the committee today. Does any